find your pot of gold. Ever catch a shooting star? And tell me, how high did you soar? Ever felt like you were dreaming, just to find that you're awake, and the magic that surrounds you can lift you up and guide you on your way?
All right. Hello, everyone, and hello, Savannah. I'm back with another edition of Citizens Connection. I'm excited tonight. We're doing a special edition. And just to educate everyone, I started Citizens Connection when I did a run for the Public Service Commission along with Daniel Blackman. This is when John Ossoff and Senator Warnock were campaigning. And so it was an important strategy to make sure people understood what was going on all across Georgia. When you run for a Public Service Commission, it's like running for governor. But yeah, it was a lot, but it was fun. But we have a special edition. We hopefully will have other candidates join us, Clinton. Thank you for joining us. Tell us a little bit about who you are. They should know, but just for those who have never met you before.
I'm born and raised here in Savannah. I'm a longtime resident. I'm a graduate of Armstrong State University. I'm also a graduate of North Southern University. And I'm a graduate with a master's degree from Webster University. Pretty much, I'm a little bit of, I guess you could say, a modern day Renaissance person.
Gotcha.
I'm going from music to acting to information technology, information systems to human resource management.
Gotcha. HRD, I do a little bit of that. I'm an adult ed trained type person, and so adult ed, when you start talking about that, the HRD shows up in there. So you're looking at org development, human resources, developmental aspects of employees. So let's jump right in, Clinton. People aren't. I hope they aren't lost and realizing a number of us are running for city council, and again, hopefully we'll have other candidates hop on. But one of the things I wanted to do with this show, on this edition, was just kind of do a run through. I'll kind of share my experience and you hop in with yours. Right. But I know last year, I think Keisha announced she didn't qualify. We couldn't qualify until this year, but she announced it soon after, around about a month ago. This time last year, I would have announced. And then we did. In a moment, I'll play the commercial break. I'll play the announcement video. But one of the things when I started, I wanted to be very, very different. That's why. I got my team together and I said, everything we do will be different. That's just what I like, innovation. And so we had an announcement video because I was really big on the way Joe Biden does stuff as far as how he announces and run his campaign. Is exactly kind of how I wanted to mimic what we had going on. So, kind of what was your experience?
My experience was I was extremely hesitant for years in politics. I felt I wasn't qualified enough, and I just kept on sideline coaching. And what really shocked me was how unqualified so many incumbents were.
Yeah.
Compared to me, and this was years ago. And as life became more difficult for me, and I went through more financial troubles and physical troubles.
Right.
I just got tired of sitting on the sidelines, pointing out the problems.
Right.
And suggesting solutions, but never really doing anything about it. And yeah, you can protest, and yes, you can vote. But I felt that people who are born with a pre-existing condition or who have a post-condition have been ignored.
Yeah.
And I just decided to, put my foot into the chaos and just give it a go. And there was a special election, I think in 2021. And it was my first time. And man, it was chaotic, completely chaotic. I got pretty much all the volunteers I could round up. and I hit the floor running. I came in third out of 5 people.
Mm-hmm.
What was weird is most everyone was reeling from the pandemic. They were still in a state of fear. And I was the only one proposing no mandates ever. And people, when you say that, they assume you're anti-vax.
Yeah.
I'm pro-vax. But unlike many, having grown up around the medical industry, I know some vaccinations work and some do not.
Yeah.
Medicines work, some do not, and some surgeries and procedures work and some do not. The medical community is fallible because they're human. And people forget that because when you're afraid, you look up to them as a higher power. Because you're terrified, you want to live. And all reason goes out the door. And that's why the pandemic made everyone lose their critical thinking skills.
Yeah, that's it.
I wanted to reel things back in your way. Look, life is not worth living if you keep yourself indoors. You wear a mask everywhere you go and you don't live.
Mm-hmm.
There's this in everything. Yes, this is a horrible virus, but we already have viruses that mutate that we don't even know about because we're not told. You
Right.
can't live in fear. You have to live your life. And when I saw little kids playing out where it was on school with a mask on and they're this far apart, or they're just out in a park and they're yards away from one another wearing a mask, I thought, this is ridiculous. When it talked about giving vaccines to little kids who are normal, not disabled, not handicapped, perfectly healthy, I went, okay, this is wrong. Number one, they're not the demographic in danger.
Mm-hmm.
It's disabled, the handicapped, people over 40, or some combination of such, who have a lower immunity. Normal, healthy kids under 40 do not have a low immunity. They do not need the vaccine.
Right.
It's taking medicine when you're not sick. It's going to damage your body because you're not sick. And I went, I got to do something about this. And so I ran on a very strict platform of no mandates and people learning to let go of their fear and start living their lives.
Yeah.
And use your critical thinking skills and to let it be between the physician and the patient,
Mm-hmm.
not the government. That was my main thing.
Well, and you said a key thing, and one of the things I am intrigued about, especially with voters, is this whole idea of critical thinking. I say this all the time: analytical and critical thinking versus what someone tells you.
Yeah.
I'll give you a great example of that. My father and I used to share a lot of things in common as far as ideologies. But the one thing I will have to do sometimes, and because I'm a person of diversity, equity, and inclusion, is have a conversation with them around some of the things that I didn't feel were correct in that space. And so, just because people hear things or just because a person says something doesn't make it right or truthful. I'll use this election cycle, man. I tell you, when we started a year ago, and I start meeting people and start hearing from folks, I'm astonished at how much people will believe without exercising the analytical and critical thinking skills that they have to go find the facts. And I'll use this for example. The person I'm running against will say anything out loud, but instead of a person going to fact check it, they'll believe it because it was said out loud and with force. I talked to a resident today who said I had to tell the lady next to me, the lady that was sitting next to me, and said, you're not voting for this person." They were talking about my opponent. And she said, "Why would I when she never comes to my neighborhood? She only comes every 4 years to get a vote." And so when I said that at the debate, people got upset, but I know what I'm talking about. But because a person said something to you, or they're your friend or your cousin, people don't want to hold them accountable, or they don't want to think through the fact that, yeah, your friend and your sometimes your friends and your family members will tell you not untruths. And my thing is, if you're a real friend, correct your friend. But I'll be honest with you, there are a number of people in this race that are nice people, but they will not get my vote because They're not genuine about stuff. And the thing is, you want people. Here's the thing too. Let's take it even further. We want people in these spaces who are going to represent us, who have the ability to think critically, and even if they don't agree with the majority, they can think critically. It's one of the things why I think Marjorie Taylor Greene in the Congress is a pure idiot, because she just says things just to get attention. So I'll go back to the original point: is we got to exercise more critical and analytical thinking skills, and pull back from, oh, they said this thing. I always challenge people, especially people that use this word they. Who are they? You're following this invisible they, and they don't exist, because you have your own ability to use the information in front of you. If 5 people or 3 people telling you something versus one person screaming it out loud, that don't mean it's right.
Well, people forget that critical thinking is something that you have to practice. You have to ask yourself who, what, when, where, how, why, and why am I being delivered this information? What's the ulterior motive? What do they think I'll do with this specific type of information? What am I not being told? What's being omitted? And a lot of people, they want to put their trust into another person or an organization to do the thinking for them.
Mm-hmm.
The mandate is a perfect example of this. We kept quoting the CDC, the Center for Disease Control. We forget the CDC's funding comes from the federal government
Right.
and whatever administration in power. If they want to keep on receiving funding, they never give the results that correlate with the administration that's calling the shots. So they're not completely unbiased. I know they're supposed to be, and I really wish, they could be, but no organization, even if they're not funded by a federal government, is completely unbiased. That's why you kind of have to take everything with a grain of salt.
Right.
John Hopkins, you look at independent doctors and physicians, you get the intake of physicians in other countries, and you're trying to make up your mind and find the truth somewhere in the middle.
Right.
And that's not easy. And people want someone else to do it for them, number one. Number two, we all fall prey to emotions, especially passion. And if something appeals to what we've already got in our mind as an ideology, we desperately want to gravitate to it without hesitation. Rather than taking a step back going, yeah, I know I have that philosophy, but is that really the correct solution?
Right. Right.
So you need to listen to people that are different than you, who have a completely opposite philosophy in politics, religion, life, whatever. They might have a nut or a fact that you don't.
That's right.
Have a perspective that you never heard, and it might go the other way. And both of you may, well, I've said this to you before, both of you may discover that both of you are wrong, and you might come up with something completely different together.
Yeah.
But emotions run high in any debate, in any discussion, and whenever you're trying to resolve problems. And what we have failed to understand, not just in this election, but in governmental organizations like the city council, you're supposed to debate. Be civil, but you can sit there and disagree without being mean, without personally attacking one another.
Right.
The way to disagree with someone in a polite fashion. Now, I'll admit, it's difficult, especially when someone challenges you on the information that you think is actually factual. But what you should come back with is, well, let me check into the resources that you mentioned to me. Let me verify that. I'll get back to you.
Right.
Table, let's hold a table. Or if you both have checked into it, well, I think your assumption on those facts are wrong. I'm looking at those same facts and I'm looking at it this way. We'll agree to disagree. And you call it wrong. They're not your enemy. They just don't agree with you. That's it. We've forgotten this.
Well, there's a movie, one of my favorite movies is called Lean on Me. And you have Joe Clark and Dr. Napier. I'll never forget, one of my closest friends in college became the student government president, and I was the executive vice president. And we weren't friends before that, but we became friends in that space. But it reminded me of the day where it wasn't the fact that we didn't like each other. We were so different philosophically in our spaces in our head. But when we started working together, we were like this, and so we operated literally like Joe Clark and Dr. Napier. We clashed on stuff, but when we got through going bull hill on the bullhorn, all right, let's go eat dinner. And that's what it's supposed to be about. You
So,
know, I'll give you a great example. I mean, you and I've talked about issues. I've had conversations with others about issues. I'll use an example of the overlay, the alcohol overlay. You know, there have been a number of great arguments. It's like the court, the Supreme Court, great arguments about the overlay and its economic component that it brings to communities. Well, I'm in a district where time and time again, people on one half of the district are adamant and have their argument, and I have to support their argument around that. Now, what does that mean? That means we come up with a compromise, right? That
yeah,
compromise is, well, every area in the city doesn't have an overlay, but the ones that I represent, that's what they desire. Let me use this, the one thing that you and I talked about on this debate the other night. It was around this idea of an alcohol ordinance and the licensing. And
correct.
as I said, I stand firm on I'm a person of research and benchmarking. So I want to benchmark, I want to look at the data, I want to sit down and do some focus groups with the communities. Because what I propose going into it, now these are two things. I still want to get my data, but what I propose going into it is that we consider looking at this whole alcohol licensing process and even the ordinance as a tiered system. And so looking at it, what district are you in? What type of restaurant do you have? But we've got to look at it kind of like a tiered system where it's not a one and all, one and done. And so it's just a lot of work out there that, like you said, because people aren't willing to talk and listen to ideas, that is either yes, no, people take it personal, and we miss opportunities that could arise out of what you just said. Is that's just sitting back and listening and just having a real conversation and not becoming angry about it.
Well, what I want is once we establish rules for a license, and anyone who applies and pays the dues and does the plan and does every requirement to obtain a license, once those rules have been established by the city in conjunction with the districts and all other parties, they should receive an approval if they meet all the requirements. Now, if we want to change the requirements, then we go to our prospective, districts,
Right.
and we talk about changing the requirements. But if beforehand a company or organization has met the requirements and they've jumped all the hurdles, to give them a denial, and when months or only a year or two before, another organization that established a business only a couple blocks away, you approved, and they didn't even do half of the planning or have to approve all the hurdles that the other organization had to. That's having a double standard, a different set of rules for the same type of business in the same district. I'm sorry, but I don't think that's fair. You can't
Right.
have
Right.
one rule for this group of people that own the same type of business and another rule for this group of people that own the same type of business and they're both in your district. No, that's not fair.
Well, what it has come down to, and I don't have, as they said, we don't have the receipts on it, but I that I have seen, and I can pretty much have an anecdotal response to, is this politicizing of liquor licenses.
Yeah,
And and I and seeing how we've seen people perform in debates and how they have presented themselves and their temperament will give you evidence that says, yeah, that's pretty much somebody they don't like or didn't like, or they said something and now they don't want to be in their favor. That's not how we need to govern either, because there are going to be people once that you're in a leadership space, and people who didn't support you, you still got to represent them fairly. This
yeah,
is not a fifth grade game of tag you're in. It's not a third grade conversation around who's friends and who's not. People, what I've said a long time, that people don't understand, people's lives are on the line. Every time we make these decisions, people's lives are on the line,
Yes.
whether it be through their employment, whether it be through their experience, whether it be through an emotional attachment to a building, whatever that means, people's lives are on the line. And it baffles me how personally people have taken this election. Here's a question I ask people, and I'm going to ask you this.
All right.
If city council pays $25,000 a year, and that's the salary, have you ever seen a person work that hard for $25,000 like these incumbents? Some of these incumbents have.
Uh, some of these incumbents I don't think have worked very hard, and others have worked diligently.
Mhm.
I won't name names.
Right,
I
right.
don't know who they are. But what I think is important, and that we keep our emotions out of it. I don't expect, if I'm elected, for any one of my constituents to come to me for approval if they've passed all the hurdles required to open up their business. If they've followed the rules, they have the plan, they paid the fees, they've done everything asked of them. They don't have to come to me for approval first. Yes, I'm their representative, but they're my boss. I'm not theirs.
Hmm.
We keep forgetting this. The people who voted you into office, they're your boss. And you owe them. They don't owe you.
That's right. You know, you said a key thing there. And I want the people, the residents too, watching us and the people watching us and voters to understand one thing. Savannah, Georgia is a city manager style government. And so what that means, because people have said, we have some people out here who are aldermen that says, oh, the mayor's my boss, the best boss ever. You got some folk always bringing up the city manager and what the city manager says. Let me break it down for y'all. The city manager is the CEO of the city, okay? However, just like any organization, there's a board of directors. The board of directors is city council.
Yes. And the
That's
people,
why it blows my mind. And so the chairman of the board is the mayor. So what it is the city manager technically works for the city council.
yes, I agree with that.
And so when you start, I'm hearing these folk like, y'all mean to tell me, and I'm sitting there because I was listening to all of the debates, that some of this rhetoric coming out like, that doesn't make sense. Because, you know, the mayor technically is a lateral position on council. The only thing is there's certain executive authority that's given, but the city manager reports to council. And so when folks are just like, well, the city manager said, you got it backwards. You should be saying what you instructed the city manager to do. And I always get, go ahead, I'm sorry.
The city manager gives you their input, and you, the city council, make the decision.
Right. And
And
so,
backwards, they think that they should give the city manager their input, and the city manager makes the decision. No, that's the wrong way. And the people, which you can say are the shareholders, are the one that elected you to your position.
that's it.
And the shareholders determine who they select to be in charge.
That's right. And I want to even go further with this. So I want to go back to that millage rate because a lot of residents, even in my area, a lot of the residents have received the wrong information. Okay, so a millage rate, like they said, it might be the lowest, but the millage rate basically is one thing, and then your property and assessment is another. But the millage rate, so this is your millage rate. This is your assessment. The millage rate is doing this. Your assessment is doing this. But if we pull it down, your assessment now is doing this. You see how that goes?
Yeah.
So people get so confused. What got me with that whole smoke and mirrors trick they did, a couple months ago, you heard certain folk talking about, well, the millage rate has been the lowest it's been in years, and your property tax won't go up. In the same conversation, we're going to make X amount of revenue. Well, where's the revenue going to come up? Where's the revenue coming from if we're not going to raise these taxes? So I just get so bad, folks. I just want folks to pay attention and listen to the words.
Well, it's not their fault. They were misled. Number one,
Yeah, I agree.
Understand that if you keep the millage rate the same, but yet you reevaluate all the property and you give it a higher value, that allows you to raise taxes in the next billing cycle. Now, the only way to offset that is to reduce the millage rate. So even though the land, the property has been reappraised at a higher value, they can't raise the taxes on the next billing cycle because you lowered the millage rate.
Right.
Their excuse for reevaluating the property was, oh, well, if it has a higher value, you'll get more money for selling it. Did you ever think people don't want to sell their house? They want to live there for the rest of their life? Here's an idea. Why don't you just leave a property value alone, keep it the same amount that it was, keep the millage rate the same amount or level that it is, and that way property taxes wouldn't go up. But whenever they raise one or the other, property taxes will go up in the next billing cycle. And people, they were misled into thinking if you keep one of them the same, and then they don't mention the fact that you raise the other, they
Yeah.
won't know that taxes will go up in the next billing cycle.
Right.
Yeah.
It's sad. And so we're going to do a quick commercial break and we'll come back. And just for folks watching, Citizens Connection is something I started many years ago running this Public Service Commission campaign. So the videos I play are going to be videos or for the campaign, but this does not mean I'm being endorsed by another candidate. It's just my show that I run. And so I got to promote me. You can't do nothing but promote yourself. But we'll be right back, Clinton. And what I would love to do is hear more about what you're doing with your platform. We'll be right back.
All right.
The city of Savannah has always been known for its African American culture, especially in the 5th District, where I live. Over 50 years ago, my mother and father developed a home in the 5th District, in Liberty City to be exact. And since that time, we have lost our voice and struggled to find the really great leadership that makes us really proud. Our culture, our heritage, and our land have been questioned. But if you join me, Robert Bryant, next year in 2023, we can get to work and believe in change that we can all be proud of. So join me, let's believe in a change, and together we will make the District 5 stronger. Thank you. All right, we're back on a special edition of Citizens Connection. We're just, I invited the candidates to participate, and whom wants to pop on will pop on. Hopefully more will pop on. Just having a great conversation about the election season and some things that are going on. But, Clinton, in some of these races, we have some interesting platforms, and I'll go over mine in a moment. But let's hear from you. What's going on with your platform, and what's your vision for your election?
I want real transparency, and I've been saying this to the top of the mountain until I'm blue in the face. I think it's important for the people to be able to find how their revenue is being spent. This is public record, and yes, it's accessible, but it's not easy to find on the internet or even if you have a public records. And it should be. It should be where anyone can find it what the greatest means. And don't tell me that it cannot be made that way. I mean, we have social platforms that are made for easy use, where anyone can learn on the spot. And we need to do the same thing when it comes to the budget and people having access to how the budget is being used. Because what I've been trying to drive home to people is it's your money. And I don't care if you're living on government, where you live on SSI, Social Security, welfare, disability, whatever. You still pay taxes. You may not pay them, but you do. You pay them every time you go to a grocery store. You pay them every time you go to a retail store. And if you have to buy anything offline the same money, you're still paying taxes.
Right.
It doesn't matter. So those that are living on government, you're paying whether you know it or not. And we need to make things affordable. Now, we can raise the minimum wage all we like, but all we're going to do is raise taxes and raise prices. And they'll be if you're making the same amount of money when minimum wage was lower. I think we should attack at the expenses and the taxes first. Let businesses do what they want. Every small business owner wants to grow if they have the money to do so. Right. And when they grow, they need new employees, period. And that opens up a whole new door a revenue stream for people that are looking for something better or people who are just looking for anything. But as long as we stranglehold the businesses, especially small business owners, they're not going to survive, and it's going to shrink the employment environment. And, a lot of people are barely making it. They either need a better job or worse, they don't have a job. And they can't make it through the online filtering systems to even get an interview, no matter how qualified they are.
Right.
So I think we should lower taxes, and I think we'll make up the money in volume, because when people have more money, they buy more. They expand their businesses more. If they're an employee, they purchase stuff more, and you make a profit through volume.
Yeah. Well, you said a lot there. One of the things that I would be interested in exploring, I'm not, there are a lot of things we get to explore. But one of the things I would be very interested in exploring is this dual taxation for citizens of Savannah. So if you're in the city of Savannah, some folks, if not all, pay dual property taxes. So you pay county property tax and municipal property tax. So yeah, me in addition. So it's like, but yet in that same conversation, as you heard, their services across the board are not the same. I live in a neighborhood in the 5th District that I've lived and grown from all my life, outside of my work for higher ed, those spaces I've been in. But I could tell you the street sweeper might come once a month. If that, I haven't really sat there and assessed it correctly, but if you saw it more frequently, if I saw it more frequently, it would be memorable. But there are certain areas of the city where it might come 2 or 3 times a week. Now, that's not equitable. What I think right now, and nobody's running on a ticket like the other side. The other side's running on a ticket. That's wonderful. I don't care. But you have certain issues that are prominent. One of those being this pro-tourist on the pro-Savanians. And you and I both, and a number of us, stand on the side of pro-Savanians, meaning it's great to do these things for the tourists, but our people are at a detriment, and that should not be the case. If nothing else, the citizens should be ranked number 1 in the conversation around services and amenities, and then our guests. The last I looked, you don't invite a guest in your house and allow them to just go full rampant and at your detriment. You allow your guests to come in, you're hospitable. But right now we're in a situation where we have put billions of dollars on Broughton Street, yet the police department is suffering.
Here's the problem, in my opinion. When you allow a person in your house, they're your guests, but they gotta follow your rules. And when we have tourists here, we flipped it. And where we're following the tourist rules, they're not following ours.
Right.
And we've also forgotten, when you're elected, the priority is your residents first, everyone else second. That's not being anti-tourist. It's simply representing the people that live here permanently, because they're not going to give up and leave. The tourists don't have any real skin in the game except to have a pleasant time, or to stay here for a vacation, or maybe if they go to school here, once they graduate, they may not stay. Now, I'd like them to. Once they become a permanent resident, then guess what? They become a priority. But when you're not a permanent resident, you should come secondary. It doesn't mean we're against you. It just means we're going to represent our own first, then we'll look out for you. And I think we can have a healthy balance. A lot of people, they're in power, all they're thinking is future profit, future profit. Well, if you raise prices so high, the tourists are going to stop coming. And the people are going to lose jobs once the tourists start coming. And the people that lose jobs are the permanent residents.
Right.
They're going to suffer. This is why I was a year and a half ago when I ran the special election, I was against the hotel motel tax. I know what it's going to do. In order to keep the same percentage of profit, the hotels and motels, the restaurants, all of them, They're going to have to lower the hours of their employees. They're going to have to lay some employees off. They might even be so bold as to ask some of their higher employees to take a pay cut. Worse, they might even get into their lower employees a percentage of their gratuity, which they have no right to do.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do it. This is going to cause more people to end up not being able to pay their bills. And not everyone has a couch that they can surf on. Not everyone have a relative or a friend that they can live with. Some people will end up doubling the homeless rate.
Yeah.
And not everyone that's homeless is disabled or handicapped or a drug addict or an alcoholic.
Right.
Some are regular people like you that hit hard times. And once you hit rock bottom, a homeless shelter is a temporary solution. You can only stay in a homeless shelter so long, and they have to rotate you out when you're back on the street. I think we should lower taxes. I think we should stop doing things like raising taxes in the hospitality sector, but it raises the prices for the tourists. And one of the main reasons that the tourists come here is an affordable vacation spot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? The second reason is the historical scenery. If we overdevelop, we're going to destroy the very authenticity that drives the tourists here to vacation to begin with.
Yeah.
Have you forgotten the reason they're coming to Savannah?
Yeah.
If you overdevelop, it won't look the same. People will be like, this is like other cities. Let's go somewhere else. And the prices are just as high.
Well,
and our economy, and we don't even know it.
Yeah, and with that, we have a council with the majority that just removed 3 major historic buildings from the register. And the answer from one incumbent was, well, the person that used to have the building says it was okay. Well, that's not a good answer. That's just that's actually a first grade answer, to be honest with you. 8th grader could have told you that the significance of the facility contributes to what you said, which is the historic valuation of the overall city. And so it just baffles me how I tell people this. In this conversation we're dealing with now, we have incumbents that have eaten the fruit of the devil, and the fruit of the devil is money. And when you eat of things like that, and the fruit of the devil, you become drunk. And the Bible talks about a drunk mind and not being sober. And so they're not working from a sober mind. Common sense will tell you you're coming to the historic, like you said, the historic city of Savannah.
Yeah.
You're coming to a historic city of Savannah and you see no historic properties, but yet you see a whole lot of homelessness.
Yeah.
See, that doesn't even make sense right there, does it? But people have not sat there and really thought about that very issue. But let me go back. Let's jump to this next. You brought up a next.
Yeah, right, something. I'm all for people making money because it's hard to generate money, and I understand. But you have to compare long-term gain as opposed to short-term gain.
Right. No, what I was going to next. So we have the pro-tourist versus the pro-Savannah candidates. But then we have the folks, and I'm going to label as those who have real solutions for homelessness versus those who are just clueless. And what we're helping voters do right now is look at the issues. So with homelessness, my issue, and I haven't talked a lot about it, was we could be doing a lot more if we loosen the red tape for nonprofits and stop giving out legacy gifts to people who voted for us. I have a lady right now who I have, for 3 years now, we developed her plan, her nonprofit thing. She can't even get a meeting with someone just to talk about how do we make that next step because they made the red tape the bureaucracy for nonprofits so terrible. And then they have these legacy nonprofits where you pat my back, I pat your back. There should not be a quid pro quo in any city work, period. You know, at the end of the day, I got family members and friends that can do this work too. But these opportunities are not to be attached to political favor. And that's the problem I think we have. We have a lot of things like homelessness that cannot be solved because you keep giving it to these agencies and the money does not trickle down. Hell, Reagan taught us that trickle down theory ain't gonna work right now. It doesn't work.
Well, nonprofits should be. I think there should be less regulation. Period. Okay, I'm kind of against regulations.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I'm one of those people that think it's ridiculous to make a nail salon, permit to do nails. I mean, if they mess up your nails, don't go back there. Write a bad review. If they keep getting bad reviews, they'll get no business, they'll under. Boom, problem solved. No need for a permit. No need for a health inspection. For nails? Really?
Well, I think that's more, I think I see your point. Now, I think a lot of times with those, what it comes down to is because you're messing with body parts and physical parts of a body, that gets real interesting because, for example, if you go to a nail salon, they cut your finger off by accident, oops, and that comes from certification. I really think, honestly, you raised a good point. Made me think. You raised a good point. Regulation and certification, because if you're certified, you would think that person had this level of competency. But that's a great point. How do you approach that with this whole idea of if you're certified, now I got to regulate? That's interesting. Made me think.
When I learned all this, when I was in computers, I had to get behind a lot of people that had certifications and fix their work. They were certified, but they had no performance. How I put it, they had no real world experience.
I got you.
And they also weren't poor performance. They would automatically assume I got this certification, therefore I know how to do this. No, that was wrong a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a lot of 1099 contract jobs years ago in computers going behind certification, certified people.
Right.
What really makes the mark in business, or in some businesses, is performance. And if, like, let's say you go to a nail salon and get your finger cut off,
mm-hmm.
Well, certification and permits are not going to prevent that from happening. And the person that gets their finger cut off, you can sue, and there are state and there are federal agencies that will take your case for free, and your tax dollars pay for it, and will pay for your legal fees to sue them for injuring you like that. But the best way to level it out is stop going there. When they lose enough business, they'll have to find another career. There's no point in making all these false, mirages of safety and 100% guarantees. We want so badly to have a guarantee in everything. That's why we create the certifications and the permits and the license to give us a false sense of security. And the truth is, there is no security. It's frightening. It's frightening to me too.
No, it really is, because you think about it. I have friends that work in cosmetology, and they have to do this licensing and certification. But like you said, even though they have all of that, that doesn't negate the fact that someone may put a perm in your hair too long and your hair falls out.
Exactly.
So you're right. I mean, it's, I think what it comes down to is ethics and morality a little bit in that conversation.
Yeah, and also performance and people knowing their rights. You need to understand that a lot of the tax revenue that's taken from you is being put in the organizations that give you free, not only legal advice, but legal services. But you have to look them up, you have to go there, and you have to fill the documentation in order to gain those legal services.
Yeah, man, that's but it's a good conversation. So I'm going to do another commercial break. Again, this is not an endorsement by another candidate. I personally invited other candidates to be on. So
we're not endorsing each other. We're just talking.
We're just talking. Well, here's the thing. I want people to realize that Citizens Connection was created when I ran for PSC. And one of the things I'm big on is making sure that we communicate our ideas to the public without others in the conversation, because people make up all these myths, and so it's just a way to just share ideas. So I'll be back after this commercial.
All right.
Hi, I'm Dr. Robert Bryant, and I'm running for Savannah City Council in the 5th District. Leadership requires dedication and commitment to a community, not the advancement of oneself or the catering to those who already have generational wealth. In the 5th District, we have issues, and I intend to address all of them From the fairgrounds debacle to the redistricting of property to satisfy developers, to our history of flooding and our community services and stronger engagement. Our district is and has always been the heart of Savannah. We have too rich a history in this city to not have the proper elected representation needed to help us flourish. Our current representative has been distracted and lost sight of the issues facing the 5th District. The 5th District can't take 4 more years of someone who doesn't care about the constituents or their expectations. If you put your trust in me by voting for and electing me, I promise that I will be a champion of this district and for all of your concerns. The days of personal profiteering and ignoring the will of the people stops now. A vote for Robert Bryant is a vote for true change. From Tatumville to Liberty City, from Sylvan Terrace to Quail Forest, from Poplar Place to Burritt, all the way to our friends in Hampstead. I will be an advocate for your concerns. I'm Robert Bryant, and I approve this message.
All right, we're back. We're back. So, Clinton, we were talking about them. We opened talking about, the campaign trail and when it started. So, what have you learned in this season of campaigning? I think you've been going for a few months now, or even longer than that. What has been some of your learning from this time around?
What I've been learning is how a lot of the basic needs are not being met, such as road repair, speed bumps in residential areas to protect the elderly and the young, and more importantly, they need a connection with whoever's representing them. A lot of times their emails are never answered, their calls are never picked up, their texts are constantly ignored, and I understand. When you get elected, it's like everything's falling in your lap. I know it's a lot, but you got to try to answer some of your constituents. You can't just sit there and always never have time to reply to them. And because what I notice is that a lot of the constituents are never heard until it's election time.
Right, which is, and it's, Clinton, this stuff is not easy, but it's not that hard. And so one of the things I will hope I can do, because I don't believe in promising things like this, but at least do 2 to 3 touch points throughout the year. And that's going back out, just like you canvas, go back out and knock on a few doors. Hey, how are things going? Just want to check with you. Going to those community meetings, having, what I do at my home, I've done every 3 months that I'll probably definitely love. I love sitting down talking to our seniors, but having people over and just having dinner, 5 or 6 residents from random. Hey, how things going? What I'm saying is touch points with people, town halls, virtual town halls, phone calls. It baffles me how folks have all this time to go hang out with the big donors, have time to go to people's Christmas parties, but the people that put you in the office, you don't have time to even go have a knock on the door for 5 minutes.
Yeah, and what really baffles me is once you start getting to know your neighbors, which I'm still getting to know,
Mm-hmm.
Why not go to their block parties? Why not go to their birthdays? Why not go to their celebrations? They're your residents. They're your people. And, it's not just so you can know what they need or know what problems they're having. It's also to build friendships.
You're right.
You can enjoy the festivities with your neighbors and they can enjoy your company as well. Instead, they want to build friendships with people they barely see just because they're big time donors.
Right.
I'm not against money. Every time I say this, people assume I'm against capitalism. I'm not. It's just you can have both. You don't have to trample on everyone to make a profit. And we can do this together. I'm learning my neighbors now. I try to go out canvassing. It's hard for me to come on my back. And when I do, and I start a conversation, I usually sit down with the person and I just, canvass at their door and I'll start talking to them. One the rest, because I'm out of shape. and the other is basically learn who they are. I
Yeah.
spent the majority of my life in hospitals and clinics, and then I spent the other portion in school, finding more of education, and then taking care of family. Occasionally, if I was lucky, I could hang out with my friends, but and I had a very overprotective family because I was very fragile when I was young.
Hmm.
And now it's like I'm getting to really see the world for the first
Yeah,
time.
yeah, and isn't it interesting? I tell you, I come from a mother and father who, uh, I wouldn't say they shielded, but they were very strategic about what information I was exposed to, and so when I started seeing, and I come from a space of privilege. I do. It wasn't a whole lot. It wasn't the Claire Huxtables, but there were a lot of things that like you said, you learn about later in life. But when you start living and seeing these disparities, it becomes very, very real. I'll never forget as I was canvassing, there have been a number of elderly people and families where people have literally been in pain and hurting, not physically, emotionally and mentally. And that's because they felt like no one was listening.
Yeah,
The one thing I had left was this person who I feel like has access to a resource that could help me. And that person didn't take time for me. That made me angry. That literally, if there was nothing else that I've learned, was the fact that when a person is down and you're their last hope. Now, granted, we're not going to be everywhere. We're not going to be perfect. And we're probably going to miss a phone call or two. But in that moment, like I tell people on my team, when the spirit touches you about something, respond or take the time to go through your messages. Like you said,
yeah,
there was another incident where there was a family I was working with, because at this point, I'm willing to say a good chunk of 65% of the residents reach out to me because they feel like nobody else was listening. And this is things I'm not making this up. But there was a family and I met on canvassing, and my spirit said, you need to go check on them. And there were some issues there. And I was able, not that I'm this social worker because it was way out of my lane, but because I'm in tune and realize and care about people, I was able to show up in a space and be present in a way that I needed to be for that particular moment. But what it takes is, like you said, people just taking the time to care beyond just that boat. People are not just fingers and all of that. People really have lives.
what people
And yeah,
don't understand is nothing destroys the human spirit like loneliness and feeling abandoned. I think most of the reason that I recovered and became healthy, not on thank wood, is because when I came home to spend my last remaining days, I was surrounded by love.
yeah.
I never had that because in and out of clinics and hospitals, you're isolated from everybody.
Hmm.
I never really got to go outside. I never really got to touch a tree or feel dirt. When my family decided that I was going to spend my last time on earth with them, I was surrounded by love. And when you go from complete loneliness and feeling abandoned, like you got nothing and no one, and you're living in fear every day that if you close your eyes, they'll never open again. And then you come home to people that truly cherish you. I remember for a long time I was terrified to go to sleep when my grandparents took me in here. And I thought if I closed my eyes, I would never wake up.
Wow. Wow.
My
Yeah.
grandfather would stand over me and he would tell me, don't worry, as long as I'm here, nothing's going to happen to you. You'll wake up. And I would fall asleep. He did that every night until the fear subsided. and sorry.
You're fine. Yeah, yeah.
It's it's love like that and art, it's simple caring. It gives people the will to live. And if they have the will to live, they can achieve anything, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, financially. But they need to know They have a circle, they have a network, they have friends, they have people that love them, people that care, people that if they're not here the next day, will miss them. And
Well,
when you feel like you have no one and you lose hope, you can't do anything. You're paralyzed.
that's so critical that people don't lose hope. And I think that's something we've seen citywide, and for a number of reasons. But the one thing I think, if people really take the time and go back to that critical thinking and analytical skills, they will see through the crazy. They will see through the rhetoric, and they will see the people who truly care. You know, a number of us have put the information out there. And there's an old saying I've been hearing, and we're going to have to get on off the air, is that the people that got us in this mess are not going to be the people who get us out of this mess. What do I mean by that?
What you mean is when things get inhospitable, they'll be the first ones to leave and we'll be the ones holding the problems.
Yeah.
A lot of us can't leave. And most of us that can, we don't want to. This is our home. You know, more importantly, people need to, when they're utilizing their critical thinking skills, they need to think this. Who voted for this? Who voted against this? Who gives actual action and who just gives talk?
Yeah.
You know, you need to think about what did they vote for when they were making these decisions that are harming us now. Who voted for it? Who voted against it?
Yeah.
And who came and knocked on your door, or who answered your email, or who answered your text? Even just out of 4 years, who answered it at least once?
Well, check this out, and then we're gonna get off. I found it interesting, and that's a great point. Who took the time to come knock on your door versus who sent you a mailer? That's important. That's important. But I'll see y'all next. Thank you, Clint, for being on. I'll see you all next Sunday. We'll be doing Citizens Connection all the way up until the election. Make sure you're thinking about who you're voting for, y'all. I love you. You can love your friends, your families, and your church members, but you got to love your community even more. All right? We'll see you next time. The city of Savannah has always been known for its African-American culture, especially in the 5th District, where I live. Over 50 years ago, my mother and father developed a home in the 5th District, in Liberty City to be exact. And since that time, we have lost our voice and struggled to find the really great leadership that makes us really proud. Our culture, our heritage, and our land have been questioned. But if you join me, Robert Bryant, next year in 2023, we can get to work and believe in change that we can all be proud of. So join me, let's believe in a change, and together we will make the District 5 stronger.